this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus. I woke up this morning with my mind.
Hello, hey everyone, Joey Sparks here, and this is your reminder, God's mercies are new. Again this morning, we dive into James, the end chapters of James chapters 4 and 5 this week in our Bible rereading plan. He really takes off and addresses some hard-hitting issues. The first half, and arguably really the entire chapter 4, is squarely focused on the importance of humility. And we might even say the peak or the climax of this chapter, this concept of humility, is verse 10 of chapter 4. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, or before the Lord, and He will lift you up. This comes at the conclusion of a paragraph where he asks rhetorically, where are all your problems coming from? Why are you suffering what you're suffering? And he reminds them it's because of your own selfishness and your own arrogance. See, they have desires, but they are wrong desires. They have passions, but they're wrong passions. They may ask of God, but they ask with wrong motives. They're not humble before God, and they're not humble before one another. Therefore, they are not receiving the blessing. That's chapter 4 and verse 6. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Something that Solomon would say back in Proverbs chapter 3. Something that Peter felt strongly enough about as well. The Lord inspired him to record that same phrase in 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 5. So whether it's interpersonal strife, whether it's under direct persecution, whether it's seeking general wisdom, what's the advice? Learn to be humble yourself. Humble yourself before the Lord, in the sight of the Lord. Now think about how difficult it is to humble ourselves. It's easy to go through life and to allow circumstances to humble us. But it's difficult and challenging to decide to humble ourselves before the Lord. But when we remember the Lord, when we remember how great He is in comparison to us and our frail humanity in light of our sin, it's easier to humble ourselves. And we will not get far away from the cross. That will humble us. There's always room in the shadow of the cross, and that should drop us to our knees. Interestingly, that is a moment when Christ humbled Himself. Remember Philippians chapter 2, He humbled Himself to take on flesh. Then He humbled Himself to the point of being a servant. He humbled Himself in order to take on the cross. God lifted Him up on the cross, but so too the days that would follow, from that Friday night of a burial to a Sunday morning, God raised Jesus. He lifted Him up. So too God promises us to grant our desires and our passions and our asks when those are aligned with His wants and His will. He will lift us up when we choose to humble ourselves before Him and His great power. We thank you for taking the time to watch and for taking the time to read from the book of James this week. It's our prayer that the timeless Word of God will be your meditation all day today.
I woke up this morning